I've always felt that Singapore was losing its soul. It's become more affluent. We go into bigger houses. We keep our doors closed. Like a portal into the past, in a sense. And this world, you just escape from Singapore. Welcome to Clean Your Toilet podcast. My name is Jerome Lim. I'm a heritage author and I also blog on the Long and Winding Road.
Hi Jerome, nice to meet you. So my name is Pei Ying. I'm a Master Certified Coach, ex-CFO, and also the co-founder of Clean Your Toilet podcast. So very happy today to have Jerome here with us. Right, so can you share with us a little bit, just to kick off, right? How did you get into this space you're in right now? This whole, the work you do has a lot to do with tradition and heritage. I think especially the heritage aspect.
Sure.
So how did you come into this?
Yes, so I think it's really by accident. So it's really, I've always felt that Singapore was losing its soul and, it's losing its, Singaporeanness because I grew up in a very different Singapore. And I had taken up this job in Penang, and then I was in Penang and, because my family was still in Singapore and had lots of time, spent a lot of time wandering. And that was in 2007. And I discovered that Penang reminded me so much of that Singapore that I knew as a child. And that Singapore, has been lost. And I mean, besides the memories that started coming back, it also, evoked this sense that, thinking about Singapore, what we've lost, what it meant to me as a child. And today, I'm, seeing a very different Singapore, a very modern Singapore, to a sense of Singapore that has discarded some of its soul. And it was for me a call to action, a call to try to document something, to try to remember that past. Try to recall that Singapore that I grew up in. So I started this blog called The Long and Winding Road.
Right.
Yeah, inspired partly by the Beatles, but I mean, it's really, I thought of Singapore on my journey, my life journey to Singapore as being this long and winding road, twists, turns, and I got to where I am today to all that. And I felt it was important for me to try to recall that soul of Singapore. But I think, in doing so, I've also discovered that Singapore still has its soul in some way. It's just evolved.
Right.
And I think that's really what is nice to discover because beyond, the modern Singapore, there are still the stories of these old places in Singapore, places that I connected with as a child, places that my father told me stories about growing up. And I felt this connection too.
Right. I'm so curious right now, like when you talk about how Singapore has lost its soul initially, right? What was the Singapore that you grew up with that you feel is no longer here?
Yeah. So I think that Singapore was a very different Singapore in that sense. Today, as I mentioned, it's totally modern. We have the skyscrapers, we have a very efficient public transport system, wonderful roads, we all live, 80% of us live in HDB flats. And I think in the old days, it's quite different. We had lots of open spaces. We have lots of people with lots of time to come together, family, friends, right? And that, built up a certain kind of what we would call today Kampung spirit, a sense of community, a sense of helping each other out. But I think beyond that, it was really full of places which were unique, places with charm, with its own character. For example, my father would drive us. I grew up with my sister and myself, just two of us. And my father used to drive us all around Singapore, little pockets of, places that are very unique. There's this area near Tanah Merah we used to frequent. Right? It used to be by the sea. Tanah Merah named after cliffs that overlook the sea. And
so much meaning that we have kind of disconnected from.
Kind of, yeah. And I mean, we had a lot of interactions with the sea. And I think that was really one place where I saw this. And, you had not just people fishing, you had people collecting cockles. But people also, there were cottage industries, you can't think of that today, but cottage industries where people were actually burning the shells for the cockle shells for lime so that they could produce whitewash. And whitewash was a huge thing in Singapore back then. Every house was painted with whitewash.
Well, as you say that, I'm like, well, this I cannot even connect to this because I'm, probably younger than you are, right? So then when you share about it, I'm like, actually Singapore probably has a lot that we have kind of disconnected from, right? So when you say it has lost its soul, would it be the aspect of community and helping that you feel is not as prevalent anymore today?
I think that's one large aspect of it. Of course, there are other aspects of it. When I say soul, it's also things like, how we speak, the way we, interact with spaces. Those days, no shopping malls. Today, our kids all want to go to the shopping mall because there's Wi-Fi, there's a nice cafe where you can hang out in. Those days, you just look for places that you could, connect with. It could be just by the sea. You open a picnic mat, you improvise, you wade into the sea, you pick up shells, and then later you start a fire and barbecue. Right? Nothing prepared or everything improvised. I think we've lost that. And I think, but it goes beyond that. You mentioned the sense of community, the sense of maybe public spiritness, the sense of even who we are. We had a very different culture. I think the culture of, it was also a culture of coming together, the different races coming together. We spoke a common language. It wasn't English. It was some kind of maybe Malay, Bazaar Malay, sometimes maybe mixed with sprinkling of Hokkien, things like that.
Is that what we call Singlish today?
You would maybe, it kind of has evolved into a form of Singlish. Of course, Singlish today, I think Singlish today is again quite different from that Singlish we spoke back then.
Yep.
Then it was more informal. It was, I think today we have people trying to define what Singlish means. Right? We have authors who write books on what Singlish is, people who study Singlish. We have Jack Neo putting up all those movies where, he has his own brand of Singlish. But I think in those days, nobody thought about how they spoke, but this is how we spoke,
It's like you just use a language that you know in order to communicate with the different races.
Let's go makan, we go, whatever. And I think it was something that was quite unique, not just to Singapore, but Singapore and Malaysia. So Singapore and Malaysia used to be part of one whole big entity. And I think, it was fun. It was fun interacting with your friends who were different races, who spoke different languages, And it was really, I think it's something that you don't see today. Today, I think we spend too much time with books. Not books in that sense, but books as in school books. We have lots of homework or kids. In those days, as I said, we find our own happiness, right?
Yeah.
Mixing with friends, being naughty, running around. And that, I think, was what shaped me, what shaped my, view towards Singapore. And I had many interactions with many spaces. And I think all of that really made my experience of Singapore a much wider experience.
Yeah, I hear a lot of spontaneity in how we approach life in the past, right? That you kind of just look at what's around and you just go into it. You design something out of nowhere. That's the improvising. But in today's world, we've lost so much of that because even meeting a friend, we have to schedule in advance, weeks and months in advance. And I'm like, why can't we just be spontaneous, come together and let's just do it, right?
Yeah.
Because we feel like it right now versus taking that so much time just to plan things out. So I think in that aspect, there has been a lot of changes, right? But then when you look at the Kampong spirit or even being able to do such activities that is quintessential to what the old Singapore was, how do you identify that or relate that to your sense of what home is?
Home is many things, right? Home is many things to many different people. And I think for me, home, most importantly is, home, what makes home is really your friends and family around you. But I think more importantly is also the environment that shapes how you see home. So it's sense of familiarity, for example, you go to the same market you have gone to for the last 20, 30 years. It's still there. Your home, your childhood home, it's still there. That school that you went to, it's still there. So it's places that you would identify with, that cinema, that football field that you kick a ball, that playground where you sit down and maybe hurt yourself. Yeah, so these are all what I would call, building blocks of what makes home home. But I think beyond that, home could also be the software side of things, right? The community spirit is one thing. I think in the past we saw lots of people trying to help each other out without asking questions. These days you want to get help, you have to call, you have to seek help. Your family.
What do you think drives this huge change from before? Like it sounds like previously it was more unconditional, right? But now that it's harder. Maybe there are a lot more questions asked.
Yeah, I think the environment shapes it. Lifestyle shapes it. We become more private as people, as individuals. Affluence have also added into the mix because we become more affluent. We go into bigger houses. We keep our doors closed. We keep to ourselves. We spend our time trying to make money. Less time interacting with people around you. Sometimes you don't even know your neighbors nowadays.
Yeah. I guess in the past, people make do with what they have and they create the enjoyment out of it, right?
And I think there was this whole lot of sense of, we belong to this kampung, we belong to this village, we belong to this, neighborhood, and we try to make it better. We try to make lives better for ourselves, but also for our neighbors, right? It's never about just I. It's about, everyone else. And I think that's really something that's missing maybe today.
Yeah, I think it also contributes to the idea of how more people in today's world feel more lonely, right?
I guess that's a big aspect of it.
Yeah, because of that chase for money, career. And most of the time, only when they have had done well in their career, they've made the money, then they go, okay, then what's next? Then perhaps by then they realize, hey, actually what truly matters to me are my friends and family. But I've lost so many years just pursuing my own path that I've forgotten that all this matters. And sometimes you might still have time to reconnect to all these people, but in many occasions, you might already lose your friends or your family because you've gone so distant. What do you think?
Yep. And yeah, that's possible. And I think there also another big key aspect is that families have become smaller. In the past, we have bigger families, bigger extended families. Festive occasions, you used to see huge families coming together. You still see it today, but very rare. And I think what you find that, many households now, one child, two child.
Yes.
There's no longer that sense of, mixing around with your bigger friends, bigger family. Sometimes, like I used to have friends who have, growing up in a 3-room flat with 6-7 children inside.
Wow.
It. Yeah.
Okay.
And you got to know everybody, and everybody's different, and everybody have their own friends. So you have this extended kind of family in that sense. And it's all part of that, whole spirit of that kampung, that neighborhood, that estate that you live in, right? Whereas these days, I think because the families have become smaller, there's less interaction across. You only know maybe your friends in school, and sometimes you don't even talk to your own family members. These days, a lot of people just text their family members.
Yeah, I feel like right now, because of the shift, right, in the past, I think during your generation, people used to have 7-8 kids. Yeah. And because of that, then they all have their offsprings and it becomes a very huge extended family and relatives. But in today's world, we are just stuck with 1 or 2 kids, and therefore the nucleus of what makes our own community comes from friendships. Yeah. Right? In terms of how all these people who don't have a lot of extended relatives need to come together to kind of form a community. And I think what comes to me very strongly is in the recent years where social run clubs have become really popular, where people, come together, go for a run, and then after that have coffee together and like kind of make friends and they go from there. Mm-hmm. Right? Because whether initially you have school is where you make most of your friends, but once it comes to work, it becomes harder other than aside from your colleagues. If let's say they are not really of the same age range as you or they don't jive with you, then you kind of got to go out there to find communities. And I think that's maybe where the evolution that you're talking about has come up in terms of a different form of community. But then not so down to earth and Kampong spirit as it used to be in the 1960s, but more elevated in terms of how it's a social trending lifestyle that I see.
Yeah, I think you're right in your observation. I've also noticed there's a lot of these clubs, these gatherings, social gatherings, so to speak. Could be groups of cyclists, groups of walkers, groups of dancers even. And maybe people are seeking a way to connect with communities in this maybe brave new world that we live in. Yeah.
Correct. But then I'm curious about you, right? Because when you started off, you said that in your family, there's you and your sister, right? So in that sense, it's a bit more rare in terms of not that many kids. But did you then come from did you have a lot of extended relatives that brings that sense of connectedness and community to you?
I mean, we had neighbors, we had friends who had huge families. I think, my mom had friends who she was very close to, who, sometimes festive occasions will gather with the wider family. So it's kind of nice to see that. On my dad's side, he has five siblings, and I think it was quite big also in that sense, plus his cousins and all that. But I think over the years you'll find that people connect less and less and less. People get more busy.
Yep.
So we saw less and less of this over the years, and up to a point in time where maybe we only gather for Chinese New Year and Christmas, and that's about it. Yeah.
But do you feel like it's because fundamentally, even though we are connected through family, but there isn't that sense of, I actually have that vested interest to get to know you and have a deeper conversation, other than the obligation to come together because we're kind of extended family?
I guess in a way, because as I think, as I said, I think people have become more busy. And because, that's taken a lot of the focus, and maybe it saps also a lot of the energy of people, such that they don't have time for these social niceties anymore. Whereas in the past, the kampung is you go home and the kampung is
They're
there.
all there.
You just gather, whenever there's a community festival or something, like the village all comes together, help gotong royong spirit. And, it's something that I think we like today. Today is maybe a bit more organized around, grassroots events and all that. But again, it's like some people
They're not spontaneous.
It's not spontaneous.
Yeah.
And it's, in a sense, a bit top-down, put it this way.
Yes.
Whereas I think in the past, it's a lot of ground-up effort. And I think that's something that we have, over the years, saw dwindling away.
Right. So then from your perspective, like being more in touch with all these aspects, do you think there's anything that we could do to create more of that ground-up spontaneity?
One way I hope this could be done is to interest in heritage, interest in, when I say heritage, it's not just about something that's old, but how do we recognize, who we are? How do we recognize what the places, that surround us are about, what the stories? Can we get together and tell the stories? So I think this is one way we could do it. I think we are, you mentioned some of the social clubs getting together, these activities and all that. But I think it could also extend to many other ways where, we could have these informal gatherings of people who come together, not because they want to make money out of it, not because they want to network, but because, they want to just get together to make something better, to capture something more, to have a feel for the community that you live in, to have a feel for the space that you live in, to get to know that better.
So when you grew up in a kampong kind of environment, is there actually like a bigger purpose that people came together and connect, which is why it's spontaneous? Like what drives that spontaneity?
I think it's really about survival. You think about it, in the old days, why people come together in communities is really so that they could offer each other help and protection. And that's really the nucleus of what kampong or any community is. Right?
And why would other people be okay or open to actually helping?
I think it's something that comes naturally because people will help you anyway, so you will also offer them help, right? And I think it stems back even to the old days. I mean, you think about the origins of things like clan organizations, village, in a sense,
Okay.
villages that come together.
Like we got to help each other in
Yeah.
order to survive.
Everything revolves around a community. We place focus when there's a wedding. Everybody comes together, help out. You see that still in some of the maybe extended Malay families, right? Where everyone just chips in, come together. It's part of the fun of living. Coming together. Everyone's excited about it, right? Even I didn't grow up in a kampong. I grew up in a HDB flat.
Okay.
But it was very kampong-like even then. When I first moved in, I grew up in Toa Payoh. When we first moved in, it was like Toa Payoh was brand new, 1967. And you could see chickens running around because people had just moved in from the kampongs. The ground floor flats were really sought after because people came from a kampong. They still needed the space to plant the chili, the lime, the pandan.
Right.
And you saw a lot of that. But I think more importantly, you saw doors that were open and people who were ready to help. So, for example, my mom was working. I had my grandmother living with me. And when my sister was sick, she couldn't cope with taking care. Neighbor will chip in, just offer to take care. No questions asked. And I think that's really embodies what that whole kampung spirit was all about, right? Whenever there are festivals, you invite each other to house. You pass the cakes that you bake, the tarts that you made to your neighbor. And nobody say, oh, I can't eat this, it's not halal, not this, not that.
I think the thing that comes up for me when you share this was during COVID. Because during COVID, right, there were a lot of people who have been isolated.
Yeah.
I think especially the foreigners who came to Singapore to work. So I've heard stories about how their neighbors would offer them food, right, because they didn't have the means to and maybe they were sick or something. But then I think that is where in crisis then it comes up.
Yeah.
But it's a rare display.
It's a rare display, and maybe COVID forced the situation also, in the sense that it helped reset things in a lot of ways. But I think we've put COVID aside now, and we're again marching towards that.
Yeah, and do you find that fundamentally there are lessons that we should have learned from COVID that we are not learning and applying?
Yes, certainly. I think COVID does offer us many lessons, what to do, what not to do, and I think basically that sense of community that came up, during COVID, the response to it, I think that was heartening to see. And I think it's something we should certainly learn from, and something that we should certainly encourage. Maybe not top down again, but we should as a community try to move things forward this way.
Yeah. So actually then I guess what's more challenging is because, in today's world, travel is quite a big thing. Traveling overseas to work and base overseas a few years, I think that has become a norm as people try to go out and experience a different sort of life. And then what happens to home, Because when you can't have your family and friends going with you, right? How does that shape what home becomes? Like, how do we return to our own homes, perhaps within ourselves?
Well, I think it's a bigger question. It's not just, from a perspective of people traveling and going, spending a period of time abroad. But I think it's the whole globalization, if I can say that, that's really forcing this on us because we are ready to adopt and adapt. We're ready to absorb new cultures. Nothing wrong in that. We all learn from each other, which is what makes our culture so rich. Right? I mean, after all, the word culture means to cultivate, or the root word for cultures means to cultivate. And I think we are all richer for that. But then I think out of that, we must always also understand who we are, where we came from. I think that's the important part. How do we connect, even though we are far away? I think there are opportunities. Okay, so in many places where we go to work, we go to study, there are, for example, Singapore community clubs in that sense. When I was studying in the UK, we had this huge Singapore Students Club which is not just Singaporeans, Malaysians, Hong Kong people, all join together. We have activities, we have potluck sessions. That's how we kind of keep that culture alive, that spirit alive, that sense of who we are. We have cultural nights where we invite our fellow students. So, I mean, we saw that. I saw that a lot when I was studying. And
Where did you study?
in the UK, in Glasgow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know UK has a huge community,
There's
even
a huge
till
community,
today.
but I mean, it's also, there are places where maybe it's a bit more challenging. But I mean, you do see people from time to time coming together. But I think the important thing is, again, keeping in touch with your friends, your family over the miles. And I think one of the things that helps us today is, this online communication, which we didn't have in the past.
Right.
And that's one way we could maybe keep in touch. Maybe it's not ideal, but we could also help to promote, for example, even learn cooking, learn our culture this way, and try to promote it amongst, our neighbors who are overseas. So
True.
by doing that, you kind of internalize it, make it, your own story, right? And tell your story. And this is really how you can keep in touch with your culture.
Right. And so then, when you look at where you came from growing up and what that meant to you, that sense of connectedness and community, right? So for you then, how do you stay connected that way even when the world around us changes, which has changed significantly in so many decades, right?
I mean, you can never prevent change. Change is one of the few constants in life.
Yep.
But I think you need to also remember who you are, where you came from, your own culture in that sense. What your grandmother may have told you about, the stories of your family. I think this is an important part of it. This is what keeps you rooted maybe to a certain place maybe where your ancestors came from. You should never discard that, right? Because this is really part of your own personal story. And, from the wider sense of the community, I think it's also, in Singapore, it's nice because we have so many cultures coming together. And in many sense, they have kept in touch in some way or another with their past cultures, although we become more Western.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that in my own observation, probably only the Malay race, they are the people who've really kept with their culture and heritage and like still have that whole big family gatherings and stuff.
In one way, yeah. I think it's stronger with them because I think partly because maybe they're in the minority here, but they're also part of this bigger region. Whereas and the culture is still, observable and prevalent amongst the neighboring countries, right?
But do you feel like perhaps it's also because of this whole idea of having a lot of kids? Because the Malay race, they still actually have more kids than most other races in Singapore. And that was one of the reasons you mentioned about this whole sense of family.
But I think family, I think it revolves around the community because I think in terms of maybe religion, they're also quite homogeneous in that sense, right? They are usually, I mean, most of them are Muslims.
Yep.
And the mosque, the community spirit that the mosque inculcates is also part
integrated.
of that, so it's deeply ingrained in the, I mean, to say, I think amongst the Chinese also, we have this sense of community. Of course, we have started to become more individual, but I think if you go deep down, there's still the clans, there's still the temples, for example.
But how many of all this still exist today? It feels like maybe only the older generation would tend to go for clan activities versus the younger ones. How do you see it?
It's true. Which I think the clans are starting to also try to, maybe reach out to the younger community to get them, for example, learn your language, your dialect, appreciate your culture. Okay, it's kind of not fully there yet, but I think we need to also bring in the sense of awareness that we are quite different, maybe as Chinese, right? We are quite different from the Chinese who come from China because it's, I mean, not to say the culture is totally different, but I think what you see in China, there's been this communism, for example, that's kind of tempered the outlook in life. They've also become quite different from,
The
how they
original
see
roots
things,
of Chinese. Yeah.
Although yes, I mean the language, the literature, is still there. But we, in that sense, we are quite different. So we have also places like the Singapore Chinese Cultural Centre, which kind of promotes this idea of what a Singaporean Chinese means. Tells that story of the Singaporean Chinese, how we've evolved, how we've, absorbed the cultures of the region too.
Right.
So in the one extreme is that Peranakan or Nyonya Baba culture. Or the other extreme is, the people who still speak the dialects, who still profess in some way that kind of old school religion and cultural practices. Not many, but there are people who do that. And I think there's a growing sense of awareness amongst young people because we start to question, who are we as Singaporeans? What makes us Singaporean?
Yep. And what happens if we lose all the different ways of the different cultures, right?
Yeah, so Quays very interesting, right? So Quays is also another way we tell our story, right? Quays, our food, right? Even things like our very unique dishes that we have in Singapore that you have nowhere else in the world, nowhere else in the Chinese world even, right? Laksa, for example. Of course, the Malaysians and us will fight over origins, but for me, it doesn't matter. Right? It's part of who we are. It's part of who the Malaysians are in that sense. So, I think we have this rich culture now that we should not lose it in that sense. Of course, it has to evolve. It has to evolve. Everything has to remain relevant, right? You don't expect the traditions of 50 years ago to be totally relevant today. For example, wedding could take place over 3 to 7 days in the past. I don't think people have the time for that anymore.
Right.
But there are certain aspects of
weddings took 3 to 7 days in the past?
In the past, maybe 100
including
years ago.
Including the Chinese
in the Chinese,
weddings?
Yeah. Peranakan wedding would typically take 7 days, for example. Yeah. We simplified things. No harm in simplifying things. But I think importantly is that we try to remember who we are, because I think now there are many other external sources of culture, popular culture, right? K-pop, K-drama is so popular. Everything is, we've gone towards looking at Korea in many ways. You attend a K-pop concert, you see screaming girls, not just screaming girls dressed in tudongs even.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, holding up placards and things like that. So it's kind of interesting.
It's an evolution.
It's an evolution. But I think if you think about it, it's the same thing that American culture did to us in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Yeah.
It's how do you still stay true to who you are and where you come from in spite of all the different influences?
Yes.
And I guess maybe then the question is always, what's the value of holding on or remembering our connection to our own heritage, right? Because if we lose that connection, what do we actually lose in ourselves? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think that's absolutely right. That we need to have that connection that keeps us, in Singapore. What makes us Singaporean? What makes us, Singaporean, as opposed to someone from another part of the world, right?
Yeah,
a New Yorker, a Chinese true. New Yorker, a Chinese Londoner, for example.
Yeah, I think the Chinese in Singapore, like most of them would have come from China, right, or neighboring countries, and coming to Singapore, like the whole idea of having to move here and then try to create a new life, like that took a lot of resilience and persistence. Yeah. Right. And like when you keep talking about who we are, where we come from, the thing that strikes out very strongly for me is the kind of qualities that our ancestors hold that could be strengths to us. For instance, if we have ancestors who were good at running business, right, it will also kind of be part of our DNA to be able to do that. But it's just that when we do not connect to our heritage and where we come from and the genes that we're born with, then there's no way to access some of these aspects that we probably already have as a privilege.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think more importantly is, what keeps us here, you see. Why do we call ourselves Singaporean even? Why are we loyal to a country? Why are we citizens of Singapore? I think that's really ultimately what it's about, right? And I think we have a lot of threats externally in that sense, right, to who we are. For example, there's a lot of mixed marriages today. I mean, I speak from my own experience because I came from a culture that's not totally Chinese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which
So-
culture do you come from? Now I'm very curious.
I would say I'm maybe one version of what a Singaporean is, right? My mom, although she's Chinese, she was adopted by a Eurasian man and an Indonesian lady the Indonesian lady spoke exclusively Bahasa Indonesia.
Wow.
Yeah, so I grew up confused.
I see. No wonder I have a little bit of a sense of vibes that you are not like fully Chinese kind of energy.
I always question, who I am. Am I Chinese? I struggle, for example, with second language because nobody spoke Mandarin at home. None of my ancestors, I can vouch for that, spoke Mandarin. Yeah. So to call it my mother tongue, I scratch my head. My mother doesn't speak it, right?
How about your dad?
So my dad's Hokkien Chinese. Right? He didn't speak, so he grew up in a household that adopted partly the Peranakan culture. Right? They're not pure Peranakans. I found out somewhere along the line got Shanghainese blood somewhere too. So I think what defines us is really not just that sense that, we must be Hokkien, but we have this Hokkien heritage, we have this Teochew heritage, we have this Cantonese heritage, but we have come to Singapore, we made life better for ourselves, right? And we've also absorbed everything else.
Yeah.
So we have this very unique,
We're actually very multicultural in spite of
Multicultural
our race.
Singaporean Chinese culture, which is quite different from Thai Chinese, quite different from Hong Kong Chinese, quite different from Chinese from anywhere else in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that you say that because for myself, my grandfather was actually adopted by a Malay family during World War II. So he lost contact with his own family and he was brought up by a Malay family. And because of that, then he had a Malay name and so did my dad and his siblings. Right. And that also inherently made me more connected to the Malay culture and the Malay food, even though I'm supposedly my Chinese race, right? So it's interesting how we absorb the influences, even though that is not fundamentally our so-called heritage to begin with.
And I think that's the joy of being a Singaporean, right?
Yeah.
It's how we are able to accept and adapt. And that defines who we are. It's that ability to just take in whatever it is without question, Does it matter whether we're Chinese? It doesn't matter, What matters is we're Singaporean, we have Chinese heritage, we have Malay heritage, we have whatever heritage, we have Rojak heritage. Right? But it's how we came together, how we made our lives better, how we, use that to build our future, right? And I think Singapore, the story of Singapore is all about this, about the story of adaptability, right, in adversity, the story of adapting to change, right? Environment changes. Right? We used to have colonial masters. We tried to become part of Malaysia. That failed, and we just moved on and built this nation out of hardly anything.
Yeah, I like that, the whole idea of adapting in adversity. That's a very nice tagline, and I think it's very apt for the world that's coming next, right? Where people are all concerned about AI and what it's going to do to us, and how do we adapt if we do see it as adversity in terms of how it will kind of take away some jobs.
Yeah, so I think what keeps us here is that, right? And, our ability to just change and although yes, we are Chinese, we must always remember that we are Malay, we are Indian. We have to remember that, right? But more importantly, we have to remember we are part of Singapore, part of the Singapore story, and it's really what we want to carry forward, right? So that's what heritage to me is, what you inherit and how
Is that the meaning of heritage?
For me, that's what I mean, heritage, the root word is to inherit, right?
To inherit.
So it's what we inherit from the past. Maybe whatever we take, we make it relevant for today. But more importantly, we make it work for the future. So this is really that passing down, that inheritance, that we use it to build our future with. So this is what heritage is to me. It's something that's living. It's not, something that's steeped in the past. That's history.
Yeah, like it may not be like a building, it may not be like physical stuff, but it may be qualities that we've taken on through the years.
I mean, you spoke about buildings. Buildings also speak of heritage in the sense that buildings, like we can identify with certain buildings, right? But the users change, and we must allow the use to change. We must allow it to adapt. We must allow it to, be there for our future. Because if a building doesn't change its use, it'll just be dead space. So it's the same analogy we can use for ourselves as Singaporeans. Right? So it's this ability to move on, but remember what connects us to Singapore.
Yep, understand.
Yeah.
So then how about the thing around culture? Because you mentioned to cultivate, right? What are we really cultivating?
A new Singaporean culture out of what made us who we are. So culture, for me, again, is not something that's static. It's not something that, that the traditions that you brought over from thousands of years ago, that you, it's how you adapt that to become relevant, to tell your story, to become relevant, to, define who you are. So, for example, Chinese New Year, we still celebrate Chinese New Year, even though many of us are Christians, other races, other religions now, right? Maybe some even people mix marriages, right? But there's still that sense of Chineseness amongst the large majority. We still give ang pao. Our children still excited to receive ang pao. Most of us still have that reunion dinner in some form. Right? Maybe it's evolved. We go out rather than the mum slave at home and cook, right?
Yes, there's a lot of evolution of what the culture or the heritage has
I
become.
think that's also beneficial because it benefits the businesses who are catering to this. Right? So I think this is really what it's about, how we make it work for ourselves, for our future.
Right.
And I think for me, that's really the important part of what culture is. Culture is never static. Our food is never static. Like it changes. And the fact that we have these very unique forms of food in Singapore, it shows that change. It shows that evolution.
Yeah, even the different forms of it, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of private dining today versus just going to a restaurant.
Yeah, even that form, yes, that's true also. And I think many of us enjoy private dining in some way or another. And I mean, it's a way to maybe package and tell a story.
Yeah, it's definitely a low barrier of entry for people who are really passionate about food and are happy to put the work to bring it out there, right? Because I think with private dining, that was also how I got more access to Peranakan food. Because otherwise in Singapore, the number of such restaurants are actually quite limited.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole idea of Peranakan food, what is Peranakan food anyway?
Yeah.
It's a fusion.
Yeah.
It started off as a fusion. And I think you will find that amongst the Peranakans, right, they tell you, oh, my mom's cooking is the best. Some will prefer maybe this restaurant closer to my mom's cooking.
Yep.
Some will prefer the other one. So there's a large variation also. But I think the joy of it is that there is this large variation. It's something that we can celebrate. Right?
Understand. So actually in the work you do, like, you spoke about long and winding road. What does it mean for you?
What does it mean for me? I think it's, for me, it's a way to tell my story. Yeah. I mean, it really started off, as I mentioned, it was in Penang and kind of that evoked kind of all these memories I had of Singapore. I said, I must capture this so that, it's not lost. But I think what it ultimately means for me is really telling the story of change. And for me, today, what it does is to connect past and present and maybe hopefully into the future. So it could be even things like how the railway has evolved. I mean, I used to be very passionate about the railway because that's how I used to go up to Malaysia to my wife, she was from KL and we used to go
Take the
across every
train.
fortnight, right?
Okay.
So it meant a huge thing to me. But then the whole railway line closed. I captured it. That's really one of the things that drove audience to my blog, because I spoke extensively on the experiences about what to even see in Singapore in terms of the railway before its closure.
And why does it matter so much for you, especially the railway?
For me, it's a thing that connects, and it also connected me with, many other people, because in the whole process of capturing it, I made so many new friends.
I see.
who are
But
still my
would you
friends.
say it is your journey, like, your journey taking the train from Singapore to Malaysia, the memories that were created taking the train, or even people you met on the train, like what was it that made it so important for you to have to document this aspect?
Okay, for one, I think that aspect, of course, how it connected me with my girlfriend, now my wife, right? But I think more importantly, it was the whole experience of doing it is something very unique. It's something that you will never, ever be able to get again, because the railway was a very Malaysian thing. It brought the trains down to Singapore, to this part of Singapore that you would never see unless you travel on the train. Right? It opened up a whole space where there's so much greenery. You reach Bukit Timah station, it looked like something out of a storybook. Right? Very quaint, maybe Enid Blyton kind of story, where you find these train stations out in the countryside. And I think that community that was there, I also got to know the people who are connected with it. And I think it was a very different world compared to what Singapore was becoming. And it really opened up a new dimension to this part of Singapore that you never see before. So for me, that's really important to remember that. To remember how I used to use it as a place of escape. Yeah.
Place of escape?
Yeah,
Okay.
One of the things that I think you found with the railway was that there were all these inaccessible spaces, but because I took the railway, I knew there were these inaccessible spaces. I found ways of getting into them. And it was really like, you could be 200 meters away from Bukit Timah Road, walk into this totally new world. It's like entering the twilight zone. It's like, entering a time warp. Like a portal into the past in a sense. And this world, like, you just escape from Singapore. That concrete world is just surrounded by greenery, surrounded by birds. You walk early in the morning, you see mist covering the tracks. You hear birds chirping. Right? And it's like totally different world.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful space for me that I became more and more in love with it, in that sense. And I felt it was such a shame that we're going to get rid of it. Yeah. So one of the things that it prompted me to do was also to advocate for this saving of this rail corridor.
Is that how the Green Corridor came about?
It wasn't my effort. It wasn't started by me. I think the Nature Society had a big part to play, but I also had a part to play in the sense that I helped them conduct walks. I also was on the different panels that eventually saw towards the regeneration of this rail corridor as it is today. Maybe it's not something that I like anymore, but I think more importantly is that it becomes a space that the larger community can use. So I think that's really the important thing, that evolution of space, that remembrance that it was once that whole line that connected people together, and it still connects people together. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but as I hear you speak about like finding secret spaces, which are nature, which I think that's something you really connect with. It's almost like a place where you return to yourself.
Well, I wouldn't say return to myself, but I for one, maybe I'm unusual about Singaporeans. Right?
Okay.
I like isolation. I like the sense of space. I like the sense of being out there and seeing nothing but greenery. to me, it's a healing thing. It heals me. It kind of refreshes me, resets me. So I think for me, it's important for me to do that. Even when I take holidays, I make sure there's an element of walking some part, things like that. And I mean, it's nice to see that you have that in Singapore. You still have that in many ways. I think Singapore is a city that will surprise you because you have pockets of this.
Yes, there are still hidden spots that are not mainstream yet.
And at that point in time, the railway corridor was one such place. It's really a secret space because nobody really ventured into it except for a few people who run, who jog, who cycle. But other than that, you don't see anybody. You could be just alone, one in this whole world. And I think for me, I enjoy that. I enjoy being escaping once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as you talk about it, I mean, just now when you're talking, I can almost imagine you stepping into like a secret world or a secret garden, so to speak. That's why I'm like, it's just when you're just with nature yourself, it gives you that space to go inward, connect. And that is also what rejuvenates a person. And actually, there's a lot of energy we get back from nature. But in today's world, people are just so caught up with their devices and, you know, what's concrete and what's online that we lose that sense of touch to nature, which is actually where we also come from.
It's true. And I think it's also, Singapore just got too crowded.
Yes, with the aim to get 6 over million people within the country.
We've already crossed the 6 million mark. Yeah. And it's just like endless stream of people. So I think sometimes you just need to get away from people. Although I did talk about community, but you know, there are times where you just want to be alone. And I'm glad there's still spaces where I can be alone in, put it this way. And I always enjoy my morning walks and things like that to these spaces.
Right. So you still feel that there are spaces within Singapore where you can still have that spaciousness to yourself to...
Yeah, but I mean, increasingly we are losing it. I mean, I like more natural spaces. We tend to curate, we tend to, you know, manicure spaces, even our parks.
Yes, we're very French.
Tend to be landscape, tend to be, there's a lot of input, a lot of money spent on boardwalks and things like that. Sometimes I feel that's unnecessary. But I think in Singapore, maybe it's important because we need to reach out to, or we need to maximize the use of the space. But therein is also the other issue of crowding. So we have some wonderful nature parks, for example. Some of them tend to get too crowded over the weekends. The rail corridor is another example. You know what we've done with it? It's so crowded now. That I don't get that sense of joy from it in that same way that I got before. Of course, it's still there. It's still a nice, pleasant space to walk. But I don't derive the same level of, you know, pleasure that I got from as it was before.
Yeah, I understand.
But I can't be selfish.
Yes. I'm sure there are other sports within Singapore that brings that kind of... Yes. That if you know, you know. We are not going to share so much about it, but, so that you can still have that spaciousness to yourself. Yeah. Was there something else you wanted to share?
I mean, there are certainly spots that people avoid, like cemeteries.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, so
even cemetery spots are disappearing these days as the government collects back the land for some other users.
Yeah. I mean, one wonderful space is Bukit Brown also. It's really interesting because it's also history, it's also, in a sense, heritage, and it's also nature, because nature has taken over.
Yep, correct. So as we come close to the end of the hour, right, just wanted to check in with you, like, what would you say is something that you like to leave as a message to the audience listening in, right, regarding this whole idea of heritage, tradition, and how we should bring that forward as a campus?
Yeah. I think, you know, what's important is, for me, right, it's, you know, really not to discard your past. Your past is what connects you to the space. And I mean, one way I do it is through stories, because my father used to tell me lots of stories about spaces. And I think, it's important to pass this down the generations. And this is something I think we need to do more of, to pass down our traditions or whatever we have left of it. Of course, it must evolve, but we still need to remember, things that connect us with this little island.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of experiencing and then telling the stories such that it creates the memories that sticks with us understanding who we are as people and where we come from.
Yes, certainly, yes.
Yes. So thank you for joining us on the podcast. It was nice having you and hearing what you've shared around the deep perspectives around how we can connect to ourselves and our heritage.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Let tradition guide you, not bind you. Choose inner work over obligation.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.